Thor made the Big Bang. In One Piece, specifically. There's a famous Thor myth that says that he drank about a Pacific Ocean-sized amount of mead. The calorie gain from that kind of feat would inflate his body to about 3 times denser than the size of a neutron star, causing it to collapse in on itself like a black hole. And boom, you have the Big Bang. Again, Thor's only ever been named by Enel, the guy who ate the Goru Goru no Mi list and the movie. So in One Piece, there's also no space. Space isn't space, it's just another sea to travel on, like the Black Sea. Let's take a look at the form and function of how Skywalk and Moonwalk both work. Being able to propel yourself into the sky, completely acceptable within a shonen setting. However, the atmospheric drag that would be experienced from doing even a single skywalk would mean that your body is traveling at about 12 meters per second, breaking the sound barrier. Your body would combust into flames at 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, approximately. And I understand, the people who've been shown to show Skywalk and Moonwalk have some form of durability. Unlike New Ghost Charlotte, this mid part of a collective is able to skywalk and moonwalk just fine, without burning to a crisp. There's no atmosphere in One Piece. How do I substantiate that? The Arc Maxim didn't even have any propulsion jets on it, it literally sailed to the fucking moon. So Tachii, how does any of that mean that Shanks is gonna die and Kid will kill him? For that, we have to look at the man, the myth, the legend, former Vice Admiral, Jaguar D. Saul. Did you know he was a part of the Marines before Garp and Sengoku were even just a twinkle in their father's eye? No cap. Sengoku was Fleet Admiral at the time Vice Admiral Saul was investigating the Buster Call on Ohara and met Nico Olvia. That man 1v1'd a Buster Call and was saved by the second best admiral, Akainu top 1 Kaido Kuzan. And his importance and presence on the island of Elbaf is incredibly relevant. Jaguar D. Saul ain't no giant, he's a Wotan. Wotans are considered sea gods, or at least giant monks if we're looking at Watatsume, who has yet to have any confirmed race. How does a sea god assist a magnet boy in killing a red-haired rat? Well, first things first, let's muddy the waters on all the praise that Shanks gets. First, Divine Departure done by Shanks was laughable compared to the Divine Departure from Roger. At the bare minimum, Odin was sent flying. I get it, Shanks was after poneglyphs. Well, why not just take poneglyph rubbings from a sunken ship when he can already swim? Is he afraid of getting wet? Does he have trauma from the first chapter where he was amputated? I mean, that's a pretty consistent thing for Shanks. He seems to stay away from the people who scar him, seeing as how he's avoided Blackbeard since he got packed with that scar on his face right now. Shanks is fraudulent. After 1079, I want that nigga's head on a fucking platter, Oda. Please, I'm coping so hard, bro. I'm sorry, let me just spin this narrative for you. Effectively, the crux of this, the core of my argument, is that Shanks is in a mirror match setup, just like how Blackbeard is in a mirror match setup with Luffy. Luffy and Blackbeard are both the dual sides of the coin of what a black hole is. Now, a lot of people misconstrue the idea of what a black hole is. It's actually the brightest thing in most galaxies, seeing as how the accretion disk and the event horizon shine brighter than almost anything in said galaxies. Now remember, Blackbeard and Luffy, 2 sides to the same coin. Why wouldn't that apply to Shanks? I mean, it applies to both of their first mates. Killer, for some reason, was able to react just as fast as Shanks was able to fly and see that future sight, because guess who was in front of that railgun? 3-Eye Oni Killer. But Tachii, what role would they be fighting for in this new generation of One Piece? Why not the god of war from Ragnarok himself, Tyr, the red-headed amputee that is said to do battle with that wolf Fenrir? Now, if we remember in that movie that I dropped, Tequila Wolf and the bridge constructed is that proverbial wolf. And at the end of the series, do you genuinely think that Luffy is actually gonna return that straw hat? He was the only person in canon, not even Roger, not even Shanks, was ever once called Mugiwara. It is Luffy exclusively, to the point where he's acknowledged as exclusively Mugiwara, even by the boy Kid. Point being, I don't have much legs to this. So let's just have some fun hypothesizing. Seeing as how hockey is still one of the most narratively unexplained things in the entire story, seeing as how not only Lime Juice, a member of the Red Hair Pirates, but also Thunder Lord McGuy, former Whitebeard commander, for some reason they're able to channel lightning and electricity from their bodies and able to use that around their weapons. To be fair, Thunder Lord McGuy was a swordsman. He also looks a little bit like a Tengu, doesn't he? Endgame Bubble Hephaestus Usopp is gonna work like Woody the Woodpecker, I promise. Toon Force Straw Hats, we're calling it now, baby. So let's try to use some of our real life understanding of how science in of itself works and try to see if we can break this stuff down. As Bertolt Brecht wrote, if some discoveries follow our predictions, we will look at them with particular distrust, and only bloody and broken, then with iron on our souls, will we begin to ask ourselves if we might not be right after all. So let's talk about Einstein, the king of clever wrong. He didn't even think that gravitational waves existed. That was actually his teacher. He didn't even think that black holes existed. He actually got a letter from a World War I soldier, Karl Schwarzschild, who was actually the first person to send Einstein an actual equation that quantified black holes. And prior to him, it was Simon Laplace and his boy in the 18th century. Information and knowledge is how we understand and break down the universe around us. And in One Piece, willpower is what literally runs the world. A starfish said that verbatim. That is gospel to our ears here. So looking at the railgun, that was apparently so deadly that Shanks had to go save all of the fodder that's a part of his crew. Part of his fleet. I apologize. It's incredibly hard to look at Shanks really and say, hey, yeah, you have narrative weight going forward in the story. I promise you, when we see Kid again, it is going to be Luffy from Sabaody. He is going to cry. He's going to be broken. He's going to have to build himself back up from square one. And who was there for Luffy? Who was there beating those themes into Luffy? It was Jinbei. What did he remind him? It doesn't matter whether you have a crew. It doesn't matter whether you are a pirate. It does not matter whether you are dead. As long as you still have your friends, there is a future to fight for. And you know, Oda has specifically chosen to make Kid hide his bag. On top of that, the anime gave us the best feat to come from any character that is not the main protagonist or the monster Yonko trio of Jinbei, Zoro, and Sanji, because Luffy is so far above them, it's ridiculous. Mother Misery. How many characters do we think can survive what Kid survived? I must emphasize, I have to emphasize, because it is that important. Kid specifically looked at Law after shooting a geriatric woman in the stomach and sending her into the Red Sea of lava of that planet, looked to that polar bear hat boy and said, let's go fade Kaido. Gear 4 Luffy was still not even at Overkong level yet. Tekai CP0 did not happen yet. And Kid looked at the boy and said, let's go to the roof and fade a snake. Are we saying that Shanks can survive a Mother Misery? Are we saying that Shanks is physically strong enough to tank what Kid has been able to tank? Shanks doesn't even want to swim in the same ocean as Sea Kings anymore. That's a fact. He's been avoiding the fucking waters since he lost that arm. And it was probably his most useful arm too. But let's rotate back to hockey and arms again and make the beginning line of this video have some form of relevance. Kid is going to beat Shanks in a fight, and he will be coached and trained by Saul, mirroring the fishman that taught Luffy how to be a god. Now, Kid is going to fight a two-armed Shanks. Did I just buff Shanks right now? I was saying that he's fraudulent. How the hell can he spawn a whole nother arm? Perfect examples. When Zoro used his Ashura against the giraffe that turned itself into a pasta maker, he spawned 6 more arms and 2 more faces. Luffy's Kong Orgun spawns more limbs. Zoro and Luffy both are confirmed Conqueror's Haki users. Shanks is going to make a fiery golden arm and Kid will still beat him. That metal arm is gonna concave that little face in, because let me tell you why. When they get to Elbaf, when the Straw Hats get to Elbaf, Luffy's gonna put his Straw Hat over that body of Shanks and he will accept the reality and he's gonna loathe Kid exclusively. But guess where the fate is coming for Luffy next? With Vivi. She's an endgame player. Lucia got splashed down by water. Link in description for playlist. So Shanks' brother, or doppelganger, I'm not dying on that hill yet, but there is another fraudulent rat, because Shanks does not have the words yes sir in his vocabulary. When he went to go meet Whitebeard, his adoptive father's best friend, and showed us that he was able to bang with the quote-unquote conquerors at that time and split that sky, was a toothpick. Shanks was a toothpick and he could not say yes sir to Whitebeard because that's not him. Shanks moves around like his pronouns are I'm him, and that's fraudulent. Mihawk cut that bullshit like it was nothing. Don't worry, the Mihawk addendum is coming because he did cut through Shanks' Conqueror's Haki, and that is how you blacken a blade. Again, still do think that Kid is gonna do it. I just have to wait for more actual feats to pull from. Taking L's from only Yonkos isn't enough. Being amputated by the first mate of a Yonko isn't enough. I understand all of these things. However, my headcanon and my devotion to the best part of the Yonko trio, because they are a Yonko trio. I understand that, you know, Gear 5 Nika was the god put on the poster, but his value is equivalent to both Law, the person whose devil fruit is literally worth more than him. How is a plant worth more than you? Law's a fraud too! Dismiss him! I'm really having fun with this, I'm sorry. He is the best part of that trio. And they are all would give a lot of emphasis to Kid also coming from that same broken area, as he's also one of the few kids in the confirmed SBS drawings of his younger youth to have tattered clothing alongside Bartholomew Kuma. And there's a large difference in time scale between these two drawings. Kuma is walking around with a book and a little backpack, and Kid was building a robot. We don't know when he ate his devil fruit, but if he's had his devil fruit since he was young, then that boy has been working with the secret power system of One Piece, i.e. Haki, since inception, and he's needed his imagination to grow beyond the limitations of what he himself was able to build. Killer's scythes? He built that. Those spinning blades were the first thing to do internal damage to that big snake Kaido. Fact. Because the Gamma Knife from Law, that does confirm that space in One Piece is not space, because Gamma Knife exists, meaning gamma waves exist. Therefore, gamma waves cannot puncture you if you are not affected by something that does not perpetuate gamma waves and gamma radiation. But Gamma Knife happened after Scyther Sonic, boys. Three-Eye Killer was a beast. Now look at these gains on my boys. And using Bellamy as the standard, seeing as how when he died for the second time, his dream was broken, and then when he died good on the village of Dyed Goods, which, by the way, is Weaver's Town from the song Binks Sake. And the port renown that the song is referring to is also the Red Port. That's why it was all about freeing slaves or captured children. Kind of like how Kid had to unite the broken kingdom of the fallen Sorbet monarchy and then built his kid pirates around that, and then was cooking up plans to get good. Doflamingo was not on Kid's radar at all. He didn't give a fuck about those smile fruits. He could not care less about that massive drug smuggling organization that Doflamingo had operating. But do you know who he was ready to give fade to the moment he saw? Dofi's fucking boss. Tell me again how Law's better. He couldn't even fight his own villain. He got his arm cut off and was screaming like a bitch. At the bare minimum, Kid faded a Yonko so low. Oh, but Law's Puncture Willy and Shock Willy were important to make a hole in the ground. If you think Linlin couldn't walk off both of those moves, which she physically did as she was beating the shit out of Law, Law asked for a fucking hero. And who arrived like a goddamn hero? Killer and Kid would have killed Linlin faster. put respect on my boy. Kid will kill Shanks by the end of this year. The Sorbet Addendum Part 2 is coming up because this one's already running for 20 minutes and I'm not editing this past that. But hey, we met a fucking deadline, boys. 2 videos in the same month. What is this, 2022? Peep game on the slander. Shanks in of himself went through such a life-changing fade after Blackbeard cut his face one time that he printed that scar on his fucking flag. I'm done. This video's over. The man's a fucking fraud. Dismiss him. Like and share. But let's close on a nice little Bertolt Brecht quote from the play of the life of Galileo. The aim of science is not to open the door to infinite wisdom, but to set a limit on infinite error. Thank you. Part 2 coming.